But Ray was a CIA analyst for 27 years, routinely presenting the morning intelligence briefing at the White House. His CIA career began as a young man under JFK, but it lasted until the presidency of George Bush Sr., and he would have spent time in the Oval Office briefing as president both George Bush and Ronald Reagan. So I spoke to Ray earlier today, and I started by asking him just to explain to all of us the role of a presidential briefer.
Well, a presidential briefer will have worked on the brief itself the previous day. He or she will come in at 5 o'clock the next morning to go through the Operations Center take overnight, make sure that anything that needs updating will be updated, and then gets in the car and is taken down to the State Department, the Defense Department, or Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff place, or the Vice President's office, and of course the President's office for the daily brief. We did this for the first time, really, one-on-one with Ronald Reagan's senior advisors. It was unique access. First these people saw every morning, and they were prepared when they met later with the president to talk about whatever was on the front burner, and we did front burner things.
Yeah, and you would have seen a lot. I know, obviously, some of which is probably still classified, but just tell us about the type of scenarios you got yourself into with presidents.
Well, it ran the gamut. It depended on what the policy issues of the time were. My particular interest, coming from a Russian analysis background, was Gorbachev. Now, Mikhail Gorbachev appears on the scene, and the question is this guy the real deal? Or is he just a clever commie? Cleverer than the others. Now, it was kind of hard for me because I knew he was the real deal. And I knew that the responsible analysts, the ones that weren't tainted by what they thought the boss wanted to hear, they too believed this was unique. What he was putting on the front page of Pravda, what he was letting people say, my God, that was never heard of before in the Soviet system.
What do you make of the 2016 campaign from both parties?
Well, it's clownish. In my view, a very difficult choice. Now, with respect to the Russian point of view again, there are people that are saying that the Russians have hacked into Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee emails, and they are out to destroy Clinton because they want Donald Trump to win. Well, I think I know something about Russian leaders. And if I were Vladimir Putin, and I was looking at a fellow who brags about being unpredictable, who reacts violently to any slight, real or imagined, that's the last guy I would want to have his finger on the nuclear button or on the nuclear code. So the whole paradigm of the whole, syllogism falls apart if you start out with a major premise that says Vladimir Putin wants Trump to win. And the whole thing, of course, the whole charade is very clearly picked up by the media in a way to divert attention, and this is important, divert attention from the content of these emails. And I have to tell you that the content of these emails, which you'd be hard-pressed to find out from the major media, is that Hillary Clinton stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders by her work with all manner of stratagems, including the top 5 people in the Democratic National Committee who had to quit immediately as soon as those emails surfaced. So the question is not whether the Russians did it or who did it. The question is the content of the emails. That has been totally obscured in major media in my country.
Do I take from your answer that you're not happy with either choice? You're not happy to vote for Hillary Clinton or for Donald Trump?
You're a good analyst. That's exactly the case.
So I imagine there are a lot of people in the United States feeling that way with a week to go.
That's certainly true. I have already voted, of course, since I'll be abroad, so my conscience is clean.
But it means, I suppose, the media are chasing towards a date, and you see on television 11 days to go, 10 days to go, 7 days to go today. But what about the day after? What about the United States if people are not enthused by either candidate for president? What about the handover, the transition, the inauguration, and then the presidency?
Well, it will be a dispirited populace no matter what happens. What I'm concerned about is what Russia will do in the interim period between the election and the inauguration. There's almost 2 months there. I believe that it's already clear that Vladimir Putin has given up working out a sensible arrangement with respect to Syria or Ukraine with our president. I believe that Putin believes that our president is not his own man, that it's really the Pentagon that's running things and the CIA.
I want to ask you about both candidates then, should they be president-elect and then president on the international stage, starting with Donald Trump. Does he have the capacity to deal with everything you've just outlined?
There is no indication he has that capacity, no.
So what would the result be, or what would you fear?
Unpredictability. In other words, he advertises he's unpredictable. He does reverse himself back and forth. I take no real solace from the notion that he is a little bit more sensible with respect to relationships with Russia. He could change his mind tomorrow. With respect to Secretary Clinton.
Do you believe Hillary Clinton corrupt?
Well, you know, politicians tend to be corrupt. I would say she's no exception. As a matter of fact, she's a very good example of that. We could see that. I mean, for example, on the Syria thing, we know from her emails that she said, look, the objective here is to secure Israel. And the best way to do that is what we're doing in Syria, get rid of Assad. That's in the email. That's what I mean. The content is never revealed. So is that corrupt? Well, it's misguided, if not corrupt. The corruption comes with the funding of the Clinton Foundation and all these other things, from taking money from the Saudis and selling more arms to them and so forth.
You are strongly anti-war.
Yes.
And a critic, as you've just intimated, of the Iraq War. You were arrested at a Hillary Clinton rally for a protest, a silent protest, was it?
Yes, I didn't say a word. Actually, what happened was I got a ticket to this rather small auditorium where she came in, and she was greeted with such fulsome praise and accolades, and I use fulsome in the full sense of the word, that reminded me of hearing Russian leaders speak in Moscow. Бурные аплодисменты, stormy applause. Стоят, everyone stands. Well, everyone stood for about 3 minutes. And finally I said, you know, Secretary Clinton must not leave this auditorium thinking that everyone thinks that she's very, very good, because she's been responsible for untold damage, untold suffering in this world, and not only Iraq, but Syria, Libya, and so forth. And so I simply took off my outer shirt. I had my Veterans for Peace shirt on. I turned my back on her and didn't say a word. It lasted well for about 2.5 minutes. Then I was accosted from behind as well as from in front by security folks, brutalized right in front of her. People say she didn't miss a syllable. Well, she didn't. She kept on going. And the supreme irony, of course, was that she was talking about the necessity to respectful dissent, but she was talking about Iran, not Washington.
It sounds like a police state. It sounds like, you know, it's not that big a protest. Is that what you fear? Is that what your country has become?
Well,
it's a pretty minor dissent, what you did.
Well, it was, and I thought that, you know, I would at least be not beat up right in front of her. I was put in jail for a couple hours and accused of all manner of stuff. The charges were dropped. But yeah, I don't care much about me. I'm 77 years old, for God's sake. You know, I can do these things. What I care about is that laws have been introduced into our country that are unconstitutional. And I know a lot about German history. I lived there for 5 years. There were unconstitutional laws introduced into Germany in the 30s, okay? Now, it takes a while for the Supreme Court to catch up with unconstitutional laws. Meanwhile, when I go back through customs 2 weeks from now, there's an equal chance that somebody could say, McGovern, we think you're saying things that support Al-Qaeda. And under the National Defense Authorization Act, we're going to put you away for a while without a trial or jury or anything else, but not forever, just until the end of the war on terror. But Guantanamo is one place we might put you.
You're a holder of the Intelligence Commendation Medal from the CIA.
That's correct. I gave that back as soon as I realized that the director of the CIA, Porter Goss at the time, was bragging about the CIA having the power to torture people, and was descending upon Senator McCain saying, we need to make sure that any new legislation protects the CIA's ability to torture people. I said to myself, Ray, when my grandchildren asked me, what was it like? You have worked for the CIA. What's it like to torture people? I wanted to be able to say that, look, I had nothing to do with the operational part of the CIA, and besides, I did everything I could to publicly dissociate myself from an agency that I was no longer proud of having served in. So that's what I did. It was symbolic, but at least I tried to understand that, grandchildren.
That was Ray McGovern, former CIA analyst, and now, as you can hear, very critical of US foreign policy, who believes that neither Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump have the capacity to deal with, for example, what Putin will do once the election is over in terms of ring-fencing Russian power between now and January. It's interesting just to hear people cast a net beyond next Tuesday. Ray McGovern is speaking in Dublin tonight for the Irish anti-war movement. It's 26 minutes past 6. We'll be back with Off the Ball.